Our opening words today are adapted from a loving kindness mantra I learned from Jenna Jordison, who, until she moved away, was a beloved member of this congregation. I've said these lines to myself thousands of times over the years, which has proven to be a very productive contemplative practice. May I be safe from inner and outer harm. May I be happy, even with things as they are. May I be healthy and strong, and may my body serve me well. May I find peace and equanimity in my heart this day. May you be safe from inner and outer harm. May you be happy, even with things as they are. May you be healthy and strong, and may your body serve you well. May you find peace and equanimity in your heart this day. Now please speak with me this third stanza. May all beings be safe from inner and outer harm. May all beings be happy, even with things as they are. May all beings be healthy and strong, and may their bodies serve them well. May all beings find peace and equanimity in their hearts this day. And as Vox Lumina will share with us now, may all beings recognize the luminous light of love and mystery that perhaps does not begin. Perhaps it is always in all of us.
Perhaps it takes a lifetime.
Good morning. My name is Sue Forbes, and I'm honored to be with you today. Welcome. Welcome everyone to this gem of community of lifelong learners and unlearners, as Bruce suggested a couple of weeks ago that we also need to be. I include in my welcome all of you with us in person and those who are watching via Malcolm Mallory's magic and hard work to make our services accessible online. And you know, we've discovered just recently that more and more people every week are joining with us online. Maybe they're testing us out a bit. And we'd like to get to know you a little better. So if you're game, please send your contact details to info@North Shore Unitarians, that's with an S, northshoreunitarians.ca. And our music director, Allison Nixon, would love to be in touch with you and say a quick hello. So however you've joined us, whether you're new, newish, or longtime members, we hope you take away something meaningful from our service together today. We meet here every Sunday on the beautiful ancestral territories of the Coast Salish peoples to learn about what it means to be human, about how to live with depth, meaning, and purpose, and how to take actions that serve those within, among, and beyond this congregation. We drop pebbles in the waters of curiosity and open-mindedness, believing that the ripples will spread far and wide into our families, our communities, and into the wider world. In doing so, we draw on many sources of wisdom about matters both spiritual and secular, and any topics really that are dear to our hearts. And even when our take on such things differ, we aspire to treat each other with respect and kindness, knowing that no one of us has all the answers to life's big questions. And that's a good thing, because as none other than Dick Van Dyke puts it, and this is a direct quote, "Just knowing you don't have the answers is a recipe for humility, openness, acceptance, forgiveness, and an eagerness to learn. And those are all good things." And just thinking about Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins makes me happy. I know it's an old film, but it's so cute. And who knew, really, that he was out there proselytizing for the likes of our form of liberal religion, free of dogma, but based on life-affirming values. Today we have a personal story for you, which fits with our Soul Matters theme for the month, which is story. And as always, we'll punctuate our story with beautiful piano and choral music, with some contemplative time, some robust congregational singing, and afterwards an opportunity to socialize with good-hearted people. Where else can you go on a Sunday morning that offers so much in such a small package? I'll now invite Yulia Shomkina and Jimmy Lamb to come up to light our chalice, the symbol of our tradition and the light of warmth we all bring to this community. Jimmy and Yulia are a local couple who both love the joys of music and dance. And boy, do they ever add a lot to a choir party, I can tell you. And although they were originally looking for a jazz band group when they came to the church one evening, instead they were surprised to find an amazing and talented choir, and they've been eager members in it ever since, and they're just lovely to be with.
Oh, it's going already. Oh.
We preempted you.
I guess we already...
But thank you. You've added something to it. Thank you.
It's just that easy.
In this community of care, we hold and witness one another through the seasons of our lives. In this moment, may our being together hold whatever is in your heart today. There's room here for joy and sorrow, celebration and mourning, and everything in between. And with that in mind, I'll just say how happy we are that after a rough go, Karen Freed is well enough to be with us again and joining the choir. I know we have some guests here from Illinois, which is lovely. Thank you. And also, Barry and I had lunch with the Nobles recently, and they are maneuvering their health challenges with a positive attitude and a sense of humor. And it was great to laugh with them in person. And on a sad note, I want to let you know that our dear Allison's 95-year-old dad, Archie, who many of us have met, has been suffering terribly with a deteriorating health issue. He has now set a date for MAID on Friday, January the 31st. Our hearts are with you and your loved ones, Allison. And now, for all the joys and sorrows that remain in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, I'll light another candle. And now, for all the joys and sorrows that remain in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, we light another candle. And as we do so, let's take a deep breath. And as we breathe out, fill the room with feelings of hope and caring for those near and far. And as is our common practice, I'll also light a candle of global concerns. Things are changing so quickly on the global scene, for both better and worse. Thankfully, a Hamas-Israeli ceasefire has begun just this morning in the Middle East, but much conflict continues elsewhere in the world. And of course, tomorrow begins a new era for our neighbors to the south, which will have huge ramifications on Canada, especially on us in Canada, and indeed on the rest of the world. May the decisions of their new leadership be wise, so that throughout our interconnected web of existence, the rebuilding of relationships and communities can begin. Please stand now to gather our spirits in community. a journey, my own journey, towards some new insights about how to live in a tumultuous world. I'll begin in early 2001, when I learned a formal meditation practice taught by the late Joanne Broach at this church. I loved it and engaged with it very earnestly for about 8 months, until September 11th, 2001. That morning, and for several months following 9/11, I couldn't bear the thought of sitting in silence to meditate. I just couldn't focus. There was too much confusion out there in the world, and for me, too much trepidation for what was to come. But over time, I did get back into a contemplative practice, albeit one that waxed and waned over the years. I found it helpful, especially during the lows of life, to listen to guided meditations and then sit for a while in silence. Many years later, I became a real fan of the 4 horsemen of the new atheist movement: Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Christopher Hitchens, and Sam Harris. I was especially intrigued by Sam Harris, who is a neuroscientist and the author of many books. I think of him as a very well-informed and brave public intellectual, and someone with great reasoning skills. I don't always agree with him, but I find him to be politically moderate and passionate about the benefits of respectful public discourse. Over the years, I've read several of Harris's books, and then his blogs, which then morphed into a very popular podcast called Making Sense. In Making Sense, Harris converses with experts, and for him and for me, that's not a bad word. Experts on a variety of subjects, and I rarely miss an episode. Now, even though Harris is an avowed atheist, he also has a deep interest in meditation and spirituality, in the sense of the word that many Unitarians might use. In the past, he often discussed such topics on Making Sense, but in 2018, he decided to split off his spiritual interests by creating a meditation app for his phone called Waking Up. I became a beta tester for that app. And over the years, I've loved watching it evolve into a repository for conversations with dozens of superb contemplative teachers, both current and past. Everyone from Alan Watts. I'm sure that name will ring a bell with some of you. I think I learned it from Catherine Nicholson. They play recordings of his talks. Everyone from him to Jack Kornfield, Tara Brach, Robert Sapolsky, and other great thinkers. And many of them have practiced Buddhism of one sort or another. I loved listening to them all, but my meditation practice was still sporadic, too many other interesting things to do. But then COVID hit, and we all know how that disrupted the world. And I would suggest that was the beginning of a disruption in this community. I won't go into the details of that time, except to say that something bad happened when we couldn't all be in the same room together, week in and week out. When we couldn't talk to each other face to face about issues and the direction of this community. As that situation went awry, I tried so hard to understand things from many perspectives. I read a variety of books from the dueling reading lists that were there floating around. I listened to experts, watched videos, and talked at length to various people in the congregation, always on long walks because of COVID. But as we became more and more polarized, I was a bit of a wreck. I couldn't relax, I couldn't sleep well, and I certainly couldn't make sense of what was happening here or how I could help. So as a way to cope, I started meditating again, regularly, using the Waking Up app. But as time went on, I began to kind of feel like a hamster running around and around on a wheel in a cage, getting nowhere. The more I tried to pay attention, the more anxious I became. I said to my hubby, Barry, I don't think this meditation thing is good for me. and I dropped it again. But I continued to listen to the conversations on the Waking Up app, and one of them really stood out for me. It was with Stephen Bodian, a teacher who had been a Zen monk for 10 years, but who for complicated reasons gave that up and became a therapist. But he continued to be a seeker, striving always to awaken or to be enlightened. And one day he did have an incredible, life-changing experience. And when he described it, I thought, I want one of those. And as luck would have it, Stephen Bodian offered such an opportunity. Since 2007, he's been running an annual School for Awakening, an online program described as a 6-month journey of psychological and spiritual transformation grounded in direct experience of your essential nature. I didn't have a clue what my essential nature was, but it sure sounded good. Among other things, he offered to guide people to develop greater freedom from the difficult emotions and stories that cause us to suffer. And boy, did I need that. To gain deep insight into the non-dual nature of reality. Again, I had no idea what that meant, but it sounded interesting, if a bit woo-woo maybe for me. To graduate from being a seeker to being a finder. Now, I'd never really thought of myself as a seeker, but when I said that to Barry, and he almost choked on his toast, I had to agree that a quick look at my bookshelves suggested otherwise. Fourth thing, to enjoy increased happiness, peace, and overall well-being. And who wouldn't want that? The program also promised to be experiential in nature and acquire into our own minds and not about acquiring new beliefs. I was in. The course offered 12 two-hour online teaching/meditation sessions and chats in breakout rooms, 2 two-day online retreats, and 2 half-hour one-on-one phone sessions with the instructor. There were about 30 participants, mixed genders and ages, many from the US, but with a good sprinkling from Canada, South America, Europe, and as far away as Dubai. The program was based on Stephen's 2008 book called Wake Up Now, a guide to the journey of spiritual awakening. As part of the program, we were paired, seemingly at random, with another student with whom we were asked to chat for at least an hour each week about what we were learning. That sounded daunting, really. Talk with a stranger for an hour for 24 weeks? Yikes. I was paired with a man in his 60s, a physicist and green energy venture capitalist from California. I sort of thought, how am I going to talk to him? I wrote in my first email to him, I'm finding it a little unsettling to contemplate deep conversations with someone I don't know at all. However, I expect we'll quickly become friends and be able to make good use of our time together. Here's to awakening. But those pairings, and a few other friendships I made in the course, turn out to be the icing on the cake, essential to our learning. I call these folks my bliss buddies, and we continue to meet regularly on Zoom. So what did I learn about awakening, this journey of psychological and spiritual transformation? Sounds so grand, doesn't it? One thing I learned is that it can be difficult to explain. Every teacher in every tradition has a slightly different interpretation, and some are rather esoteric and abstract. I guess it's sort of like the game Bunko. If you've played, and many have in this room, if you've played it at our Fund Fest gatherings, you'll remember what Barry always says. Bunko is hard to explain, but easy to play. Awakening is a bit like that. So today, Rather than focus on what awakening is and why it's important, I'm just going to share 3 of my key takeaways from the Course. One thing I learned was a different approach to meditation. Maybe not so different from how I'd been taught or how Diane Hicks and others are practicing it here on Monday mornings, which is something you might want to check out. But it was importantly different from how I had been practicing. I approached meditation as a self-improvement project, as a way to become calmer, less reactive, less fearful, an all-round better person. I was always striving to get somewhere, to be something I wasn't already. I thought I could accomplish that by learning to tame my thinking mind, that monkey mind, that part of me that kept nattering, comparing, or judging all the time, often in rather harsh ways of myself or others. But during my spiritual crisis, for lack of a better word, I couldn't stop my thinking mind, not for 10 seconds. And as I meditated, I just became more agitated. And not just about things, out there or in here, as was the case, but also because I then labeled myself officially as a failed meditator. But in Stephen's class, we learned to turn that approach around by relaxing back into what he called our natural state of awareness or consciousness. We were instructed to drop the need to accomplish anything, or feel something different, or make progress. We learned to just rest in a sea of wakefulness, of just being. And we learned that there's no point in trying to stop our pesky thoughts because they come and go whether we like it or not. We learned to just allow them, sometimes imagining them as clouds floating through the sky, knowing that the sun is always shining brightly behind them. We learned to do like Alan Watts, to think rather like Alan Watts, who said, meditation is not self-improvement. Do not enter into it under any such delusions. There is no one to be improved. Over time, that approach reduced my identification with thoughts. I didn't have to listen to them all the time, especially those that were not productive. It's like the saying, what you resist persists. Of course, I was familiar with that admonition, but I didn't know the truth about it in the context of my thoughts until I made the shift to just allow them. And in doing so, they lost a lot of their power to confuse me, to control me. And what helped me make that shift? Part of it was listening to music by John Aston, another teacher I met, so to speak, on the app. Aston is a scholar of mind-body medicine, an accomplished musician and composer as well, and he puts his teachings about wakefulness into contemplative chants, and he has many of them. And listening to them over and over, it just helps me get into a restful, mindful state, and now to remember what I've learned. So I'd like to share a little taste of one of his chants with you, Bed of Wakefulness. The words will be on the screen, but only one word changes in each line, so it's easy to sing. Please just remain seated and either sing with the choir members and immerse yourself in the music, or simply let yourself be surrounded by chant to see where it takes you.
Lay your body and mind upon the bed of wakefulness. Just rest and be taken. Lay your worries down. and be taken. Lay your struggles down upon the bed of wakefulness. Just rest and be taken. Lay yourself down upon the bed of wakefulness. Just rest and be taken. Lay your freedom down upon the bed of wakefulness. Just rest and be taken. Lay your body and mind upon the bed of wakefulness. Just rest and be taken. Just
My new approach to meditation led to my second key takeaway was that I am an illusion. How does that land for you? Are you thinking, now she's gone over into woo-woo, right? My nose is going to drip here. But to explain what I mean, I'll rely on ideas of another waking up guest, J. Garfield. Garfield is an author and a professor of philosophy, logic, and Buddhist studies. Interestingly, he is not a religious person himself. And I like how he explains concepts in ways that don't require a leap of faith. I'll paraphrase his ideas about the self-illusion. I hope I do him justice. But if not, I recommend his book called Losing Ourselves, Learning to Live Without a Self. It's very good. Garfield starts by making a key distinction between the self, which you'll often see written in spiritual writings with a capital S, the self and the person. He argues that the self, what we commonly refer to as I, does not exist. But he doesn't deny that we exist as persons. We do. Pinch yourself. You can experience it. We're here in flesh and blood. But when he says the self is an illusion, he means that it's like a mirage, something that exists in one way, but appears in another way. A mirage exists as a refraction of the pattern of light, but it appears to us to be water. And it's the same for a self. The self is that thing we instinctively think that we are, that I, who seems to live somewhere behind our faces and talks to us all the time. I call mine mini-me. That's Chatterbox, who always judges and complains and bosses me around. It's that voice that controls me and yet is kind of separate from my body and separate from my mind. It's that third actor that acts upon the world but isn't quite in the world. In our course, we learn to think of that self as residing in a psychologically what he called identity bubble. And we were taught in various ways how to prick that bubble, to see it as an illusion. The promise being that we'd then free ourselves from the difficult emotions and stories that cause us to suffer. But as Garfield says, it's a difficult illusion to get people to see, in part because it's instinctual, it's just how we evolved, and in part because when you put it into words, it sounds preposterous. But it is how we think. And he uses a simple thought experiment to illustrate it. He says, imagine somebody whose body you'd like to have for a little while. So just close your eyes for a few seconds and imagine whose body you'd love to have for even just a day. Does anyone want to shout out who came up for you? No volunteers? Well, for me, it's Julia Roberts. I can see mini-me riding around in Julia Roberts' body, and it is blissful. And Garfield says we can all do the same for our minds. Can you imagine, for example, having Albert Einstein's mind in your body, maybe just for a little while? I can, for sure. Oh, I'd be so smart. But here's the kicker, says Garfield. The moment we think we can switch out our bodies, we've told ourselves we are not our bodies. We just ride around in our bodies. And in the same vein, we don't see ourselves as identical to our minds. We feel we have a mind and that we could have a very different one. His analogy was what enabled me to see myself as an illusion, and my identity bubble burst. Until then, I thought of my bubble as being very thick and gelatinous, sort of like a fat jellyfish. And if you've ever poked a fair-sized jellyfish that's washed up on the beach, you'll know what I mean. They look so delicate, but out of the water, they're quite tough and rubbery, and you can't squish them. And I felt my bubble as being protective in some way, that if it was pricked, I would be totally exposed and left vulnerable to the world with a pile of gelatinous goo at my feet. So I didn't want it to be pricked, really. But that's not what happened when my bubble burst. When that image of myself was pricked, I could see that, like a mirage, it appeared in one way, but existed in another. And that allowed me to see, to see my experience of myself as just a collection of thoughts and feelings and memories that I could choose to identify with or not. And learning that has changed how I see myself, which has proven to be very freeing and liberating. I now understand myself not as a fixed identity, but as a process. Something that's changed by my every experience and interaction. And I can see others as process too, which has given me a much deeper and more, relaxed understanding of what it is to be human. My third powerful takeaway was that I acquired a profound sense of wonder for the mystery of consciousness, which in turn has evolved into a non-dual way of interpreting reality. It started with a simple idea that I'd never really taken the time to think about deeply, and that is that the only thing I can know for sure, for absolutely for sure, is that I am aware. I am aware of something. I know I'm aware because I experience things, sights, sounds, tastes, touch, smells, but also thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I experience those things in consciousness and only in consciousness. Without consciousness, I wouldn't know if my hand was on a hot element, and I wouldn't grieve because I wouldn't feel sad. As Sam Harris puts it more poetically, consciousness, awareness, is what makes us able to love the people we love. And it's what makes our failures to love so tragic. It's what makes it possible for us to feel every joy and every sorrow. It's the excitement in what we look forward to and the sting in every missed opportunity. It's the border between life and death When I think about consciousness in that way, it changes my sense of reality. I can get the old truth in the saying, perception is reality. There's the objective reality of what happens, and there's a subjective or constructed reality of how I, in my mind, interpret what happens. And that fits with one of Ron's phrases that I always liked. I am of thee as you are of me. It speaks to the idea that we're not separate from each other. We kind of co-create each other. And it's what the late author Anais Nin meant when she wrote, we do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. And what the writer David Brooks means when he says, a person is a point of view. Brooks adds, every person you meet is a creative artist who takes the events of life and over time creates a very personal way of seeing the world. Our minds create a world with beauty and ugliness, excitement and tedium, friends and enemies. And we live within that construction. People don't see the world with their eyes. They see it with their entire life. I now better understand what our teacher Stephen Bodian meant when he taught that how we experience and respond to the world depends very much on our karmic bundle. I love that terminology. It just sounds so friendly. He explains that karmic bundle includes the many things over which we have no control. Our genetic makeup, our family of origin dynamics, the culture we grew up in, the opportunities we're exposed to, etc., etc. It's our karmic bundle that determines how we construct our version of reality. And interestingly, it all depends on the luck of the draw. If you really think about it, it all depends on the luck of the draw. We don't get to choose many of those things. We respond to them. And that too is a very liberating idea. It kind of suggests that we're all doing the best we can as we make our way through life. And of course that could lead into a whole discussion of free will, which is a really mind-bending topic and perhaps one for another day, or not. It's complex. Anyway, so I learned important things in the school for awakening, many things, many more than I've talked about here today. But the highlights were, I learned that meditation is not about mastering a technique or achieving a state of mind. It's about getting in touch with our natural state of awareness. It's about gaining the confidence that comes with noticing again and again how thoughts unravel and vanish. Once we learn to really notice them, you feel it. I learned that I am an illusion. There is no mini-me inside here that I have to believe all the time. And that while I can't control my thoughts, I can stop them from controlling me, at least to some degree. And that's liberating. It's a form of freedom. And I learned to notice the bright circumstance of consciousness. This, in our conscious minds, is where life is lived. And recognizing that has changed my perspective on reality, and I might even say on what it means to be a conscious human being. But would I describe myself as awakened with a capital A? No, not yet anyway. But that's okay. Because for me, life is a journey, not a destination. Now for Barry, it's the other way around. But maybe that's why we make a good team. And maybe it really is, as Vox Lumina's song said, perhaps it takes a lifetime to open our eyes, to learn to see. And with that, I'd now like to take you through a guided meditation that may let you experience some of the ideas I've highlighted today. So please, close your eyes and let yourself get comfortable in your chair. Give yourself over to the thought that these are likely the only minutes you'll take today to focus on the nature of awareness, of consciousness. And yet consciousness is the substance of everything you will experience today and every other day. To begin, gently rock just a little bit from side to side, and just briefly. Feel your weight shift in your chair. Sense your position of maximum ease. Let your jaw sink, just 1/8 of an inch or so, but feel it go. Let your shoulders and arms be totally slack, limp, like old ropes. And let your chest and belly be warm and soft. Feel a gentle, mild kind of energy all through your torso. And let it spread down into your hips and down further into your upper legs and lower legs and feet. Notice how your breathing is for you in this moment, without trying to change it. Just notice how paying attention to your breath can allow your whole system to relax. If you sense any held tension or tightness anywhere in the body, imagine yourself sinking slowly into a warm hot tub on a winter's evening. Just relax into it. And in this state, imagine yourself setting aside your to-do list. In this moment, there is nothing to do, nothing to accomplish, nowhere to go, and no one to be. There's just this, existing consciously in and as awareness. There's only this relaxation into what is right now, here. Be open to this opportunity to let your whole system of body, mind, and heart be present. Even in this state of relaxation, you may experience a rush of thoughts in your mind. The momentum from your efforts to get here this morning. This is natural. Just acknowledge it. Don't struggle to stop your thoughts. Allow them to settle. As those habitual mental movements start to ease, what might come to the fore is the quality of awareness itself, always present, but not always noticed, felt, or connected with. Awareness is not something to search for. It's to be recognized as ever-present, timelessly. Perhaps it does not begin. Perhaps it is always. We just need to remember that connecting with it allows us to be here now. To be here. To just be. And as we now sit in silence for 1 minute, allow any noises in the room or bodily sensation, anything that comes up for you, as best you can, allow them to float on by, like clouds on a breezy day. And now, take a deep breath in and out, and 2 more in your own time. Wiggle your fingers and toss a little bit. And as you open your eyes, come back here, where it's nice to be together like this. Yes, this is a nice place to be together, and it's also a place where we remind ourselves of needs that exist beyond this community. But for this month only, our collection will go to our Congregational Support Fund. Sometimes people in this community need tiding over with groceries or other needs, and we like to help out. If you ever find yourself in that place, please speak with Leslie White, and only with Leslie. Any discussions with her will be entirely confidential. And don't be shy. Remember, we all need to lean on each other sometimes. Give generously if you can as our ushers take the collection, and as our choir sings one of my favorite anthems, another favorite. The first one they sang this morning was a favorite too. This one speaks to the peace we can find physically, perhaps in nature, or psychologically at our heart's core when we know how to connect with it. For all that you do to support the well-being of people in this community and beyond, we give thanks. And we give thanks to the many people who help create our Sunday morning experiences, including all of you. You know, it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a big team of people, too many to mention individually, to make these mornings come together. After the service today, please join us for coffee and tea. It's upstairs at the back of the room there, a few snacks, for some social time with old friends, and hopefully you'll make some new friends. Maybe you'd like to chat about your experience with meditation, or find out more from Diane about our own Monday morning meditation sessions. I've heard that they're very worthwhile. Next week, Bruce Grierson's service is about spiritual humility. He'll ponder questions like, how have your belief systems changed? Are there ways in which they are still evolving? There's going to be a lot there for sure. After next week's service, we'll hold our 2025 budget meeting. These are always important and interesting, so please be sure to review your packages that were sent out earlier this week and bring your questions and comments. And we also have several fun events on the calendar. One is a series of Fun Fest movie nights on February 7 and 28 and March 28. These are hosted here by our in-house film aficionados, Brian McConnell and Andrea Fast. And I've never met one of their films that wasn't thought-provoking and worthy of discussion. So please come, it'll be a lot of fun and interesting. And on February 15, you might want to join a group of us who are going to be attending an afternoon production at Presentation House. Looks like lots of fun, and it's really handy to get to. Just let Janny know if you want to go, and there could be good carpooling opportunity too. And later this winter, Allison, not very long from now, but a little later, Allison hopes to have a group of us create another wall mural like this one, along these lines. She's hoping that it will look something like what you see there. Not entirely. Not entirely, but along those lines. And she'll be looking for input and participation from many of us on that project. And I worked on this one a little bit, this bottom corner, and it's really amazing what's possible under Allison's instruction. No? Somebody's...
Tuesday, we are starting a new event here, the Guitar Interest Group. This is your new gig. Please come and talk about all things guitar. We'll watch YouTubes of your favorite players. We'll gossip about your favorite artists. And we can play, bring your instrument if you wish, but no skills and no instrument required. Tuesday at 7 right here.
At 7. Okay, Tuesday at 7. Sounds like lots of fun. And Paul told me that you don't have to know how to play the guitar to come, right? It's just anybody can join.
Gossip and listen.
So now please stand as you're able to sing, robustly, mind you, about creating a land of freedom, justice, and song. And maybe we'll...
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound.
Please be seated. To close, I'll take you back to where we began. You read with me a version of my loving kindness mantra. But since I attended the School for Awakening, I've added another line to each stanza as my way of dealing with some of the contentious issues that in times past caused a rift in our congregation. The lines are, "May I be interested in and kind to every person I meet. May I be interested in and kind to, or may you be interested and kind to every person you meet. May all beings be interested and kind to every person they meet." And it's amazing to me how saying those lines over and over again, along with the others, has changed how I interact with every person I encounter. I'm just way more likely to remember to find out about people, especially about strangers who may not have been as fortunate as I have been. People who, as Marcus often reminded us, may be struggling with a heavy burden of which we are not aware. It's my small gesture to help widen the circle and include everyone. And now, please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame. The world calls us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose.
We go forth with courage and love.
Please join hands, stand and join hands as you wish to sing Circle Round for Freedom while I tackle this other candle.